And while we're waiting, I'll share a story, and this story ties into today's lesson. There was once this preacher that was traveling from town to town. And years ago, 250 years ago, the preachers would travel from town to town. They would give these fire and brimstone speeches and completely awaken the hearts and souls of the people and make them cry and hopefully bring them to repentance. The Baal Shem Tov saw this. Baal Shem Tov didn't like this way of teaching, and he changed the method. But until the Baal Shem Tov, this is the way the preachers would go from town to town. This preacher once comes to a town. The people in this little village were very simple folk, nice people, God-fearing individuals, but not very intelligent or learned individuals. But this preacher really believed in himself. He was convinced he was the best preacher in the entire world. And if you didn't believe in it, he would convince you that this is the way it is. So basically, he was sure that he was the smartest guy in town. And he gets up on the podium and he starts to give his fire and brimstone speech. And he's talking about all these esoteric ideas. And no one in the room understands what he's talking about. They're all very simple farmers, people, day laborers, whatever jobs they had. They weren't these great intellectuals. They didn't understand what he was saying, except for one guy kept on shaking his head like this. And then when the preacher turned his head to the other one, he went like this. When the preacher turned this way, he went like this. And when he turned back the other way, he went like this. And every time this guy in the audience would shake his head, either yes or no, the preacher would get more excited and believe that he's giving over this great talk, and he would get more into it and go for longer and longer and longer. Finally, after 3 hours, the preacher finishes his speech, and no one in the audience understood anything he was saying. But he comes over to this one guy that was shaking his head, and so he says, "So, did you like my talk? Do you understand what I spoke about?" He says, "No, I didn't understand one word." So he didn't understand one word. So why were you shaking your head like this? Why were you shaking your head like that? He says, no, the whole time you were talking, I was looking at you and I said, wait, last year my goat died. And when you look from this angle, you look just like my goat. So I was going like this, but I think you're a reincarnated soul of my goat. But then when you turn the other way, you didn't look like my goat anymore. So I went like that. No, it's not my goat. But I kept it going. Every time you turn this way, I said, yeah, you are my goat. And I said, no, you're not my goat. And so the guy was quite disappointed at this. So he says, so tell me, am I your goat or not? He says, you're definitely a goat, but you're not mine. So I think this leads into our class, today's lesson. But I would like to start.
Do we have a PDF?
Oh, yes, thank you. Before I start, I am going to put the pin to Kayla Pete, who's in our class. Her mother passed away since the last class that we had 2 weeks ago. I'd like to dedicate today's lesson to your mother, to Yenta Yehudis Bas Zalman, and may you know of no more pain and suffering.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Where we go again, understanding reincarnation. That is today's lesson. Hopefully you have put on your seatbelt and you're ready for the journey of a lifetime, because today's lesson will blow your mind, as we do with the teens. When you have a mind-blowing idea, everyone goes, poof. All right. So today's lesson will certainly, I believe and I hope, will cause you to have more questions, but this is precisely why we are learning this subject, reincarnation. More than a fascinating concept, Judaism provides a practical way to imagine this mystical process and explains why it is important,
grief and consolation,
both to departed souls and to our lives today.
What is the significance of its various traditions? This lesson provides a meaningful Jewish perspective.
All right, so what exactly is this subject of today's lesson? What exactly is reincarnation? What is the Jewish view of reincarnation? And most importantly, how do we apply it to our life? And how does it impact the way we live our life today? And it's a very complex subject, a very deep subject, because I think while it's fascinating to some of us, it's also quite disturbing to some of us as well. In other words, I think it brings up a certain question as to if this idea of reincarnation exists, so what is my purpose? So what is my role in this world? In other words, if I was here already before, so what's the purpose of me being here again? Just to continue on or to get someone else's life? Is it reincarnation? Does it mean that I don't have a personality of my own? I don't have any individuality of my own. I'm simply just a mirror image or a continuation of what else someone else started, what someone else lived their lives. So we have to understand this idea of reincarnation and how does it apply to us today? In other words, is it good that I continue what someone else has started, or
You're still saying no PDF.
Still no PDF. How do we feel about reincarnation? Is it a connection with the past, or is it a denial of personal identity? Many love this idea of reincarnation. It's almost giving us a second chance. Maybe we screwed up the first time around, and now our soul has another opportunity to make up for the mistakes it has done in the first round. Or some people are disturbed by this idea because reincarnation seems to be a denial of a personal identity. I'm not just who I think I am, and soon I'll become someone else entirely. Moreover, we like to think that we are who we make ourselves into. The idea that our soul is some sort of recycled goods, that we enter this world with a baggage of previous existence and will later be recycled again after our death, to many it sounds unfair. So we have to understand this idea of reincarnation. But first, let's take a little test. Not really a test, but let's first see how we think, okay? So turn to page 175 in your books and PDFs. And just for our own purposes, we're not going to ask anyone to answer their questions, but for our own purposes to see how we think about this idea of reincarnation. Circle a T for true or an F for false to indicate whether you consider each of the following statements regarding reincarnation to be accurate. Number one, belief in reincarnation is basic to Judaism. Do you think is that true or false? Number two, in the Jewish view, reincarnation means that a soul that inhabited one body returns to inhabit another. Is that true or false? And by the end of today's lesson, we will answer all these questions. Okay, I think you'll have a good understanding. Abra, do you have the PDF?
If you could upload it again.
Upload it again? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to upload it again. Okay.
Rabbi, Beth gave me the book.
Oh, good. Excellent. Okay, good.
Thank
I'm
you
gonna
so
upload it.
much.
Let me upload lesson 5 again, just so you have it. Okay, it's uploading now. Number 3, a human soul does not have its own identity, but shares its identity with someone who lived in a previous life. Is that true or false? Again, we're going to discuss this later on. Number 5, the purpose of doing good in one's current lifetime is to be reincarnated as a person of higher status. Do you think that's true according to Judaism or false? Number 6, a soul is reincarnated as a penalty for sins committed in a prior life. Is that true or false? And 7, most souls today are reincarnations. Do you think that's true according to Jewish life or false? Before we go further, we can definitely state that with confidence that reincarnation is in fact an accepted Jewish belief. That is a given. Judaism believes in it, this idea of reincarnation. We need not go any further than our prayers that we say every single night before we go to sleep. We say what is known as the Shema before going to bed. And in this Shema prayer, we open up the prayer by saying like this in text number 1. Marty or Sheila, would you like to read text number 1? Page 176. It looks like you're unmuted, but I can't hear you for some reason. You are unmuted, but I can't hear you. Now. No, still can't hear you. Something's wrong with your microphone. Says you're muted. Okay, so we'll go to the next person. We'll go to Sivan, just so we don't waste any time here. Sivan, you want to read please text number 1?
Sure, Rabbi.
Go ahead.
Master of the universe, I hereby forgive anyone who has angered or vexed me or sinned against me, either physically or financially, against my honor or anything else that is mine, whether accidentally or intentionally, inadvertently or deliberately, by speech or by deed, in this incarnation or in any other.
Okay, so as we can clearly see, this idea of reincarnation is definitely a Jewish belief. It's not continuing this slides. Why is it not going? Second. Hold on. All right. Okay. As Sivan just read, if the soul is reincarnated, when does it experience Gan Eden or Gehenna? In other words, remember, if you recall, in the past weeks, we spoke about the journey of the soul, how it travels to the Garden of Eden and back down again, and so on. And so the question is, when exactly does it travel if the whole idea of the soul is reincarnated? When exactly does it spend the time in the Garden of Eden, right? Or in hell, in Gehenna? But we see clearly from reading number 1 that it says, whether accidentally or intentionally, inadvertently or deliberately, by speech or by deed, in this incarnation or in any other. So we forgive anyone in any incarnation, which means clearly that Judaism does believe in this idea of reincarnation. So we need to clarify, what is this idea of reincarnation that Judaism talks about? So let's start from the beginning. How do we even know that Judaism expresses this concept of reincarnation? From the Torah, the verses itself, it doesn't seem to mention it clearly that there's this idea that the soul dies and is reincarnated into another person, or as we're going to see soon, into an animal perhaps, or even into food. The possibility to that as well. And so we know this from the Kabbalah, the Jewish mystical teachings that expound upon the verses of the Torah. On page 177, you see in the gray box, or where it says number 2, not in the gray, it says number 2, the many lives of a soul. Anyone hoping to shed light on the genuine Jewish perspective of the purpose and function of reincarnation must first turn to the teachings of the 16th century master Kabbalist, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, Rabbi Isaac Luria, known as the Arizal, who's universally accepted as a preeminent author on the matter. The Arizal is a fascinating individual. He was a student of Rav Moshe Cordovera, known as the Ramak. And after the Ramak, his teacher, passed away, Rabbi Isaac Luria, or the Arizal, began to teach, and he taught for 2 years. And then he died. There was a plague that came through the city of Tzfat where he lived, and he died at the young age of 38. But in his 2 years that he taught, a vast amount of Kabbalistic knowledge has been expressed. And his student, Reb Chaim Vital, wrote it all down. Till today, we're studying the Arizal's teachings and the depths of what he taught us. So he explained this dynamic mechanism of reincarnation. So let's begin to understand how we come to this concept of reincarnation. So we need to understand the purpose and function of reincarnation, but we must first understand the tale and history of our souls. Before we even understand this idea of reincarnation, we have to know, where does our soul come from? Where does it sit when it's not being housed in our body, or before it was housed in our body? How does it relate to previous generations? All these things we have to understand. There's a book, or a more precisely, there's a chapter in a book called Shar HaGilgulim, the portal of reincarnation, that describes all these details. This is a great Kabbalistic book based on the teachings of the Arizal, written down by Reb Chaim Vital. And in this book, in text number 2, page 177, we're going to ask Catherine to please read.
It all began with one master soul, the soul of Adam, which included all future souls. Subsequently, this master soul passed on to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and was then divided among the 12 tribes. Afterward, the soul was further partitioned among the 70 souls and the descendants of Jacob that accompanied him to Egypt, and eventually among the 600,000 souls who left Egypt.
Okay, thank you. For those that are looking at the screen, you saw the beautiful graphics we have. Oh, I forgot to connect it there. No, you have to bring the Apple TV box is in the sanctuary somewhere there. I'm not sure where. Okay, thank you. So if you look at the graphics here, let's go back a little bit. It all started from Adam. Oops, 1 second. From Adam, a little seed. And then it went to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You see that the tree is beginning to grow. Then it went to the 12 tribes. It's growing even more. Went to the 70 souls of Jacob's family. Tree goes even more. Then to the souls of the 600,000 root souls. It keeps on growing. Now, has the seed been diminished at all? No. The seed just began to branch out. So when you have a tree, the tree keeps on expanding and expanding. Doesn't take away from the original beginning of that tree. In fact, you can make many trees from the original tree. It could keep on expanding from one tree to the next. And this is the way the soul works. Adam is the root soul. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are also considered root souls. So too also with the 12 tribes, the 70 souls, and the 70 souls of Jacob's family, and the 600,000 Jews that were standing at the foot of Mount Sinai. These are considered the root souls. What does it mean, a root soul? Have you ever noticed a candle, and you have one candle that is burning? You can take from that one candle, and you can add many, many more candles. Does not diminish the original candle's glow, or the original candle's light, or the size of the original flame. It just keeps on adding. A soul is the same way. When you have a root soul, that root soul can be broken apart to millions and billions of other souls. All human race, all human beings that exist in today's universe come from these 600,000 original root souls. So what is Reb Chaim Vital telling us? That you have the body, the original souls. And from these original souls, you have all the other souls. Our souls that we have existence today are reincarnated souls from the original 600,000 souls. Now, are we an exact duplicate, an exact replica of the original soul? And the answer is no. Just like the candle, or just like a tree. You can graft many trees from the original tree. Each tree takes upon itself its own identity, its own personality. It comes from that tree, but it's not the original tree. It's a new tree. Our souls come from the original soul, but it's a new soul. Not a new root soul. It's a new soul that identifies with us. Let's now go to text number 3. Okay, would you like to read, please? We're continuing now, also from the Shar HaGagolim, this portal of reincarnation. And let's see what he says here.
Furthermore, you must know that every person must fulfill all of the 613 mitzvot. If a soul does not fulfill all 613 mitzvot in action, speech, and thought, it must be reincarnated until it completes them all.
So here's the secret to what he's saying. One may ask, what is the purpose of reincarnation? Is it just there should be many people on this universe? In other words, if there's 600,000 root souls, then that's it. Then they all came into this world. So finished. Good, beautiful. What is the purpose of us today? And the reason is because it's possible that the 600,000 root souls, each of those souls have not completed their mission. The soul has to A, reveal God's presence, B, fulfill all 613 mitzvot, and C, rectify and elevate both body and soul. If the soul does not complete this mission, it has to come back to this world to complete that mission. Does this make any sense?
There's a question.
There's a question, okay?
There are more than 600,000 Jews. How do the root souls get distributed?
So first of all, when we talk about the souls, we're talking about all people, not just the Jewish souls, but even so let's just take several million people, let's say 10 million, just for the sake of giving a number. It's possible that 2 million people come from just one root soul, maybe. Because there's no limit how many candles you can light from the original flame, or because there's no limit how many trees you can graft from the original tree. So it's possible that one soul has not finished its mission. So it can be broken apart, but it's not really broken apart. A new flame is lit from the original one, doesn't diminish the original one. It's just added to it in order for it to assist it in completing its mission of all of the 613 mitzvot. This is why each one of us has to try to do all the mitzvot. If we do all the mitzvot, perhaps we are the one that is going to complete the mission of that soul. So we can't say, the original soul did 100 mitzvot or 612. I'm just going to do one, right? To do this. No, first of all, we don't know which one, but also secondly, our task is to finish it. Therefore, we have to do all the mitzvahs. Maybe we will complete the task that the original soul did not do.
If it's all souls, then how can the whole populace who's non-Jewish perform the mitzvah, since their requirement would be the Noahide laws? Isn't that setting the soul up for failure?
I don't understand the question. Read the question again.
If it's all souls, then how can the whole populace who's non-Jewish perform the mitzvah, since the requirement would be the Noahide laws?
Oh, so they have to do their laws. Everyone has to fill their laws in its completest form in order to complete the mission of their soul. Let's try to understand this a little bit differently, okay? The Torah is broken down into 4 sections. In fact, I'm going to show a little video. I think the video will help us understand the idea, the way the Torah is broken down. And once we break down the video, we'll understand the idea a little bit better. We'll understand the concept, I should say, of how the Kabbalists explain this idea of reincarnation, which will then ultimately help us understand the idea of reincarnation. Okay? You ready? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear the sound.
Human authors express themselves in their works, both directly and subtly, sometimes intentionally and always subconsciously. When we read a text, we can choose either to read the lines or to engage in more intricate analysis and read between the lines. The divine author of the Torah did something similar, but to an infinitely greater degree. God expressed himself in the text in multiple ways all at once, directly as well as subtly, with plenty of insinuation and a vast hidden layer of the divine subconscious. And he then instructed us to excavate it all. Jewish tradition separates these layers of understanding into 4 categories. The first is pshat, direct intention, which is derived by examining context and syntax. For example, the Torah begins with the words, Bereshis bara Elokim, es hashemayim, ve'es haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. On the plainest level of Torah understanding, this is a straightforward statement of what happened at the beginning of time. But the simple meaning is not always easy to clarify. Many biblical commentators, most notably Rabbi Shlomo Yitzhaki, the 11th century French scholar known universally as Rashi, devoted their efforts to clarifying the straightforward meaning of the often mysterious biblical texts. Our second layer of understanding is remez, allusion. This refers to subtle communications that are encoded in the text. They can be uncovered using methods such as the numerical values of the Hebrew letters, the acronyms of words and phrases, or unusually sized letters in the Torah scroll. For example, the Torah's first 2 words, Bereshis bara, in the beginning, God created, carry the numerical value of 1116. That's the identical Hashanah. We are thereby informed that Rosh Hashanah is the anniversary of creation.
People can hear it still.
The Torah begins with the wrong beginning. It describes creation, a narrative that is seemingly secondary to the Torah's primary function as a book of guidance that tells us how God expects us to act on a daily basis. The Torah should have dived directly into the nitty-gritty of the laws. On the interpretive level, however, the Torah first describes creation to tackle a major hurdle to Torah observance. The majority of Torah laws rely on the Jewish nation owning and settling the land of Israel. We were instructed to conquer the land and never relinquish our claim of ownership over it. But such a radical claim to a territory is bound to provoke opposition. Who gives us the right to take possession of a land and claim it as our eternal heritage? The Torah, therefore, begins with creation, clarifying that God is the creator of all territories, and he has the right to permanently bequeath a specific parcel to a particular people. It then records the history of God doing precisely that with the Jewish people. With this switch in sequence, the Torah supplies the Jews with the response God expects them to provide all who accuse them of land theft and occupation. The fourth layer of understanding is sod, hidden meaning. This refers to the deeply mystical messages that float behind every phrase and letter in the Torah. For example,
The word voracious can be split perfectly into two words, bara, shis, meaning he created six. God first formed the six emotive divine attributes from chesed, kindness, through yesod, attachment, as described in Jewish mysticism. God then used these six attributes to create the actual universe. So there you have a sampling of the four layers of understanding that can be found in the Torah's very first words. Beyond this, a vast ocean of knowledge is contained in these same words. And beyond that stretches the infinite vastness of wisdom contained in the rest of the Torah's close to 80,000 words.
Did everyone be able to hear the video?
Most of it.
No? Okay. Most of it. All right. So I'm going to briefly go over some of what we spoke about because I think it's very important for today's lesson for us to understand what's going on over here. We're talking about a very profound and deep concept, deep idea that is almost revolutionary. We're talking about our souls that are inside of us, and where does it come from? We are saying in today's lesson that our soul that I have within me, that is my life force, my driving force, is actually a recycled soul. How should that make me feel? I feel that I'm a complete human personality. I'm original. And we should all think that we're original. So what does it mean then that I'm a recycled or reincarnated soul? In order for us to appreciate then what this means that we are a reincarnated soul, it is important for us to understand how the Torah is dissected, okay? In life, we know that there are multiple levels to every experience. Hardly ever does somebody buy an ice cream and stuff it into their mouth in one bite. Usually, you want to first lick the sprinkles or the chocolate topping and enjoy that flavoring and the taste, and then go to the next layer and the next scoop and the next scoop to finally come to the cone, and the bottom of the cone, the ice that's sitting in the very bottom, that people love the best. In every life experience, there are multiple levels. How much more so when we're talking about a foundational teaching such as the Torah. The Torah then cannot just be linear. There has to be multiple levels in understanding the Torah. For example, the Torah is divided into primarily four distinct ways of interpretation. These are called Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod. Okay? These are the four distinct levels of interpretation. The first level is called Pshat. It's the simple interpretation of the meaning of the verse. The second one, the second level, would be the level of Remez. Remez means hints or illusions. Sometimes the hints are inferred from a general context, and sometimes the hints, such as the numerology, the value of each letter, oversized and undersized letters, all of these are different ways to understand the explanations and the hints and allusions that are hinted to us in the Torah. Then we have the third level, it's called drush, expounding and extrapolating. We have a story in the Torah, and then you have the story of the story, or the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey used to say, or the hidden part of the story. And then you have the fourth level of explanation, that is the esoteric explanation. So on the simple level, you have the soul, okay? Very nice, my life force. On a little deeper level, you have the hints and allusions. What does your soul reflect? It's coming from God, it's a part of God. Then you have the next level, expanding and extrapolating. What is the role of your soul? What is the mission, the purpose? And then you go even deeper to the esoteric explanation. Where does the soul come from? How is it maintained? How is the life sustained? And so on and so forth. So when we study the Torah then, turn to page 179. When we study the Torah, we want to take ownership of the Torah, meaning to say, we want to understand the Torah on all the levels we can possibly understand it. And this is why it says in text number 5a, may it be your will, our God, and God of our fathers, that the holy temple be rebuilt speedily in our days. And then we conclude with a very interesting statement. Then it says, and grant us our portion in your Torah. What does it mean, grant us our portion in the Torah? That when I study the Torah, I take ownership of it, meaning to say that I understand it on all levels I can possibly understand. In fact, let's continue reading. Rivka, if you can please read for us 5b, page 180. You have to unmute, Rivka. Okay.
As I explained in numerous sources, the soul of each Jew has a specific segment of the Torah which is particularly associated. This explains the phrasing of our sages' statement, grant us our portion in your Torah. Our portion implies that each of us has a unique portion with the Torah. This concept is further expressed in our sages' statement that there are noble Torah concepts that an accomplished student of the Torah is destined to introduce. Talmud Megillah 19b. In other words, the entire universe anticipates the birth of this particular diligent student, awaiting the moment that the student innovates, meaning uncovers the specific concept with the Torah. For this concept is this student's portion in the Torah. In order to fulfill this mission and gain reciprocation, each of the six root souls must fulfill 613 mitzvot, study the Torah using all different ways of interpretation, reveal its own unique part of the Torah.
So not only must every root soul study all four dimensions of the Torah, but each soul must also uncover its unique part in the Torah. And all of creation awaits for each soul to complete its task. If a soul has not accomplished this in a certain lifetime, it must be reincarnated until it does. Let me reiterate what I just said. It's very important to understand this idea. So the purpose of so first of all, what does it mean that we're reincarnated? It means that we're broken down. We're a new soul that comes from a root soul. Abraham, Adam, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the 70 souls, 600,000 souls. Why are we reincarnated? in order for each soul to uncover every detail of creation of the Torah. Okay? The soul has to return until it completes this aspect, this idea of understanding every detail of the Torah and keeping the 613 mitzvot. If a soul does not complete its mission, has to come back down to finish its task. So let's say, as we're going to see in a moment, a soul has 100,000 points that it has to get, let's just say, and it does 50,000. Those 50,000, that part of the soul, in other words, is not reincarnated. The soul only has to be reincarnated to complete the other 50,000. Just giving an example here. So not the whole soul doesn't have to be reincarnated, only the soul that has not completed its mission. But even that needs to be understood better. So let's delve into this a little bit more. If you look into your book on page 181, you will see figure 5.1. In order to fulfill its mission and gain rectification, each of the 600,000 root souls must A, fulfill all 613 mitzvot, study the Torah using all 4 different ways of interpretation, and reveal its own unique part of the Torah. Okay? So this is, in other words, a very high calling. This is why souls are continuously being reincarnated. It's very rare to have a new soul come into this world. All the souls today are 99.999% are reincarnated souls attempting to complete the mission, either fulfill all 613 mitzvahs, study the Torah, reveal. So let me explain what this means. Today, we can only fulfill maybe 240 mitzvot, okay? Most of the 630 commandments apply to the land of Israel, to the times of the Holy Temple, sacrifices. Some apply only to priests, only to Levites, and so on. So if a soul comes down to this world as an Israelite, it must, by definition, be reincarnated at some point as a Kohen, as a priest, because an Israelite cannot do certain things. If a soul comes into this world, it must be reincarnated again in the times of the Holy Temple, because so many things it cannot do in the times of the Temple. Understand? If a soul is born in the United States, it has to be born again in Israel, so it can fulfill some of the laws that only apply to the land of Israel. Or the soul has to travel to Israel. Whatever it is, the point is that it's not necessarily a punishment for the soul. It is simply a rectification to ensure that the soul returns itself to God complete. All 613 mitzvot, study the Torah in all 4 dimensions, and reveal its own unique part of the Torah. So today, if I'm going to say I'm only going to study the revealed part of the Torah, that's wonderful. But the soul needs more. The soul needs all 4 levels of the Torah. So therefore, it's critical that we do study the esoteric parts of the Torah. We have a question. Go ahead.
One, could you upload the chapter again? There's some newcomers.
Yeah.
They didn't get an email.
Okay.
And there is a question: are new souls ever created though, or are they all a reincarnation of the previous? You covered the reincarnation, but are there ever any just new ones? That
is a great question. And so we simple individuals today that live here, me and all of us over here, simple meaning in a positive way, simple, is that we are not these great mystics to be able to understand some of the depths of whether there's a new soul or not. However, the Baal Shem Tov, so we're talking about 200 years or 250 years ago, Baal Shem Tov made a huge deal, one particular Rosh Hashanah New Year, and he says that a new soul is about to enter into the world. He was so excited, and he called the father and the mother who were to give birth to this new soul, and he gave them specific things to do as the soul is about to be born. And that soul was that of the Alter Rebbe. As far as we know, that was the last new soul. So we don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. Well, what we do know is that we, each and every one of us in this room here, meaning to say in the virtual room, knows that we have to do our best to fulfill all the mitzvahs, as many as we can, in order to complete our soul. And now it could be that all that's left is one mitzvah. That's it. So the secret is to know, what is that mitzvah? How do I know what that mitzvah is that is unique to my soul, that my soul needs to correct? Did it upload? You get it?
I don't see it, but I think they.
Okay. So let's turn to page 182 on the top. Number 3, Roman numerals number 3. The purpose of reincarnation is now a lot clearer, but how does it actually work? What is the mechanism of recycling the souls? It is important to note that there are relatively standard forms of reincarnation, but there are also several variations of reincarnation. We're going to start with the standard reincarnation, then we're going to go to the completely mind-blowing ideas of reincarnation, okay? So if our minds have not been blown yet, just hold on tight. Number 6, text number 6. Mona, you want to read, please?
I'm just okay.
Page 182.
Gotcha. Thank you, Rabbi. 182. Okay. Son of a gun. I don't know if, okay, I'm sorry for making everybody wait. I'm there. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Although we've stated in numerous passages of this treatise that a specific individual soul was reincarnated in a particular person, and it was subsequently reincarnated in another specific individual, and so on, do not misread this as implying that the original soul itself is reincarnated repeatedly. Rather, each human soul branches out into innumerable roots. Every root contains an infinite quantity of soul sparks. With each subsequent reincarnation, a number of these sparks are rectified and they ascend to enjoy the rewards of heaven and dwell in the particular strata of Gan Eden that are appropriate for them. However, those soul sparks that were not rectified are reincarnated to provide further opportunity for rectification.
I think this reading helps clarify a lot of our discussion. Okay, this reading informs us that the perception that most have of reincarnation are largely inaccurate, meaning to say, there are the aforementioned root souls or stem souls or original souls. Okay, these souls contain sparks of godliness within them that must be elevated. Every soul that manages to elevate even one spark has successfully completed a mission here on earth. So if we manage to even elevate one soul, one spark that is unique to me as an individual, we have fulfilled our mission. But what happens to the sparks that are not elevated because of tasks the soul has failed to complete? So if I completed one spark that is unique to my soul, yeah, then I fulfilled my mission. And then it merits to enter to the Garden of Eden. But what happens if part of me had failed to complete my task? What happens then? Then a new soul must come into being in order to elevate these sparks. So a new soul then is grafted from the stem soul, like a new tree grafted from the old one. The old one was not destroyed. The old one is still complete, but a new one was grafted from it. Or I like to use the example of a flame, a candle. The second candle was taken from the original candle in order to give the soul the ability, because the first candle didn't complete its mission, right? It failed to complete its mission. So it needs to illuminate. A new candle has to come from the original one to rectify that spark. So number 1, the remaining sparks can be categorized in 2 groups: rectified sparks, mitzvot that were properly observed, okay, and unrectified sparks, positive mitzvot, not performed, or Torah violations transgressed. Rectified sparks ascend to Gan Eden. Unrectified sparks become the foundational spark of the reincarnated soul. In other words, a part of me has been rectified. That part of the soul does not come back into this world. That's it. But from that soul, a new soul has to be born or grafted or extrapolated, not impacting the original soul, but a new soul comes from it, is formed from it in order to fulfill its mission. So when the incomplete or damaged spark generates, the new soul is also comprised of 613 dimensions and must observe all the mitzvahs. However, the key to the new soul's progress is the foundational spark. Proper observance of the relevant commandments will allow the spark to return to its divine source. The failure in the mission will necessitate it to come back down again. Now, what happens if the soul completed everything that it had to do, except one little detail? Should the soul have to come back down again for an entire lifetime? And so here we have another idea of reincarnation. And this is called partial reincarnation. What does partial reincarnation means? It comes from the word ibor, impregnation. Let's read text number 7a. Abra, you want to read, please? Unmute yourself. You still can't see it, Mr. Tensky. Go ahead, Abra, you read, please. Unmute and go.
I'm so sorry. I see 7B,
Page
but not
183.
7A.
Page 183.
I'm missing 183 in this book. The pages are loose, and one of the.
Okay, so I'll read it then. The concept of Gilgul, reincarnation, is that a soul requiring further rectification enters the body of a child as it emerges from its mother's womb to serve as the newborn soul. It has no permission to leave that individual until the person's destined day of death. By contrast, the concept of Ibor, soul impregnation, is that a soul enters an adult body that is already inhabited by a soul. The person's primary soul received at birth. In this case, the individual is merely impregnated with a guest soul in addition to harboring a primary soul. The individual that carries an extra soul, such as a woman carries a child in her womb. Let me explain what this means, because this is incredible. Partial reincarnation, on the screen here. Partial reincarnation means like this: that we as an individual human being receives a temporary guest soul. Okay, I have my soul and I get a temporary guest soul. What is the purpose of this guest soul? It's a due purpose. First of all, it's for the soul's sake that comes into me, and it's also to assist the host soul. It is for our sake and also for the soul that's in our sake. Let me explain what this means. Let's say you're experiencing a moment in your life that you should really be very, very happy about. But for some reason, you're not. You're just, okay, this is great. But you're not like really happy. it's very possible that you all of a sudden will feel this boost of energy, and you feel this like exuberant feeling just came over you, and all of a sudden you're super happy. Maybe it lasts for 5 minutes, maybe even for 30 seconds, for a minute, whatever it is. What happened at that moment? Your journey that you are experiencing, or it could be even sadness. Let's say you're always happy, and maybe you should feel a little remorseful, and you're not feeling remorseful. All of a sudden you feel like this overwhelming remorseful feeling. It may be a fleeting moment for 1 minute, 5 minutes, whatever it is, and it leaves. What happened over here at that second? Let's dissect this. It's very important to understand it. It's very possible what happened is that your soul that you are carrying within you needs to experience immense joy. But you are holding yourself back from experiencing this intense joy. There's a soul that is wandering somewhere else, that went through life and it neglected to experience this intense joy. So God says, wait a second, I have a plan. I can help out the host soul, and I can help out this wandering soul. And I'm going to impregnate this soul into this person that will cause it this flush of joy, of happiness, and then it'll experience its mission. It'll complete what it had to do, being happy, and it'll leave the body, and the person himself will also experience this intense joy. Make sense? Or the opposite also, the feeling of pain or of sadness or remorsefulness. Or it can be even an act of being kind to someone. You are supposed to be nice to Mrs. A. And every time you see Mrs. A, you're not nice to Mrs. A. In the previous reincarnation, there was a soul that was also supposed to be nice to Mrs. A, that was not nice to Mrs. A. You pass by Mrs. A on the street, all of a sudden, out of the blue, you're nice to that person. You went home, you said, what? How did I say that nice thing to Mrs. A? I've never said that nice thing. Maybe the soul just, boom, came into you, impregnated you. You were nice to that person and fulfilled its mission and went on. And you know, it's also very possible that that night, Mrs. A passed away. It's possible that all Mrs. A had to receive was a nice gesture from you. You have completed Mrs. A's mission on this earth. In other words, the world is so complex. There's so many levels of things, of interactions that we experience that are all reflections of different parts of our soul. When we live our life to its fullest, to the utmost, we then are potentially completing our soul's mission. What does that mean, living our life to its fullest? Well, we fulfill the 630 commandments. We do what the Torah wants us to do. We are then fulfilling our soul's goal, our soul's mission. Okay? Galina, can you please read for us text 7b? Page 184.
The soul experiences Ivor for one of two reasons. The impregnated soul comes to an individual for its own sake. It is in its previous life, it failed to perform a particular mitzvah and was therefore left lacking. This was the kind of a mitzvah that was impossible to perform on the conditions of that lifetime, such as the mitzvah of Yubim, Shalitasa, and the like. It is therefore not obligated to engage in full-scale incarnation, described earlier in this treatise, for soul impregnation is sufficient. B. The impregnated soul comes solely to assist an individual to bring a person additional merit, or to guide an individual in matters of the Torah and the mitzvot. In this case, the impregnated soul lacking nothing for itself.
Okay. So it could be for the soul's sake, for the host soul's sake. It could be for the guest soul's sake. there could be multiple reasons. The point is the same, that our experiences that we experience in life are purposeful, are meaningful. Nothing happens by chance. Every encounter, every feeling, challenge is there for a reason. You know the story with this guy that came running to the rabbi? And he says, Rabbi, I need a divorce. I need a divorce. So Rabbi says, why do you need a divorce? He says, my wife does not stop making me crazy. So the rabbi says, actually, you should thank your wife. He says, what do you mean? He says, because every time your wife nags you, you are elevating your soul. So you should want her to nag you even more, because the more she nags you, the purer your soul will come. And so the guy runs back to his wife and she starts to nag him. Where were you? Where'd you go? Why are you coming so late? So he starts smiling. She says, why are you smiling? He says, because the rabbi told me every time you nag me, this is helping out my soul. So please keep it coming, because I'm elevating my soul and purifying my soul. She said, in that case, I'm not going to nag you anymore. The next day he came back to the rabbi. He thanked the rabbi for the great advice. So the point is, we don't understand why we go through certain challenges. But what we do know is we have to accept it with joy. When we accept it, we know we may be fulfilling our life's mission. But not only that, the reincarnation of the soul can also come in non-human reincarnation. You know, Yankel and his friends, this guy Yankel had a friend Moshe, and they made a pact. And they said, you know, the first guy that dies will come back to the friend and tell him what the afterlife is like. So Yankel was the first to pass away, and Moshe anxiously waits for the night when Yankel's gonna appear to Moshe in the dream or tell him what the afterlife was like. Finally, after 2 months of waiting, Yankel appears to him in the dream and says, Moshe, life is wonderful. I eat what I want. I sleep when I want. The sun shines brightly. I am surrounded by green grass and pastures. I don't have to worry. I don't have a worry in the world. Sounds wonderful, said Moshe. I can't wait to join you in heaven one day. Who said anything about heaven? Said Yankel. I've been reincarnated as a cow in Montana. So sometimes a person can be reincarnated as an animal, as a non-human. Text number 8. You have a question?
We have 2.
Oh, 2 questions. Yeah, go ahead.
If a soul is continuously being reincarnated, recycled, how does it eventually reach Hashem?
When it fulfills its mission. It could be the mitzvos, the 613 mitzvos, then it completes its mission. Yeah.
Second one is, how can souls be wandering? Like, how do souls wander? Why do they wander?
A soul can wander. It's a good question. How can souls wander? A soul can wander for several reasons. First of all, it could be as a purification process, as you spoke in a previous lesson, not as a punishment, but as a purification, as a consequence for action it needs to wander in order to complete it, to rectify itself or to purify itself. And then ultimately, the soul will then find its resting place once it completes that mission. And does this answer the question?
I think so.
Okay.
And there's one more that popped
Another
up.
question, okay.
Are we allowed to request for a guest soul to assist our host soul when needed?
So are we allowed to request a guest? So the simple answer to that is no. In other words, we don't want to disturb any souls and make it uncomfortable and pain it to have to come into a body, because it's not comfortable for the soul to have to enter the body, even especially after it died. However, there are times that a soul is happy to assist us. So for example, when a loved one dies, it says that we're not supposed to go to the cemetery for the first year after the person died, a loved one died. We go for the unveiling of the stone. After that, we don't go back for a year. Why not? Because we don't want to disturb the soul's natural journey and cycle until it reaches the heavens. Okay. But sometimes we want to go and pray at a loved one's soul. So sometimes we go and we pray to love and we say, please, dad or mom or uncle, aunt, whatever, wife, kid, child, please give me the strength that I need in order to go through this difficult task or whatever the thing is. So we're calling upon the soul to come back down here to assist us in our moment of need. Okay. So in a way, we're bothering the soul. And so what our sages say, we should go to the cemetery, but we don't call the soul down here, so to speak. We only ask the soul from its place to give us the strength that it needs. But our ultimate goal is not to disturb the souls. Why not? Because ultimately God gave us the power that we need in order to overcome our challenges. You know the famous story with all these Jews were in a room. And if anyone has ever been in a room with a bunch of Jews, all you hear is a bunch of kvetching. Everyone kvetches, oh, this problem, that issue. So what happens? Everyone sits together, and then the host of the room says, you know what? Everyone's kvetching, everyone's complaining. Take all your problems, put it into the middle. Okay? Put it to the middle pile. And now the host says, everyone, take out a problem that you want. Someone else's problems. What we'll see happening is that everyone's going to take back their problems. Why? Because ultimately, everyone has the strength to be able to overcome their challenges. And so when we have a difficulty, it's not right for us to call upon a soul, but we have to dig deep within us to find the strength that we have within us. And maybe, which we're going to talk about in a moment, that the fact that we have a challenge doing something, let's say, for example, there is a specific thing you're excited about, okay? Let's say Passover is coming. Let's say you love Passover, but every year Passover comes and you have a hard time celebrating Passover for whatever reason. It's very possible that that mitzvah, Passover, is your unique mitzvah. And that's why you're having a hard time. Because it is your unique mitzvah, you are being challenged with that mitzvah. But we'll get back to that. Let's continue now. Page 185, text number 8. I'm going to ask Luba, you want to read for us, please?
I can't read.
You can't? Okay, Ami, go ahead.
I don't have it either, sir. I'm sorry. I don't have the
I have it,
link.
Rabbi.
Okay, so go ahead to read, please. Go.
Okay.
Text 8.
Yeah.
When a human soul comes to the world and becomes soiled by sin in the process, it reincarnates into another body to rectify itself. That second life is its first reincarnation. If it fails to rectify itself during that lifetime, it may return in a second reincarnation. If it again fails to find rectification, it may endure a third reincarnation. After that, however, it is no longer provided opportunities for rectification via reincarnation.
Whoa, this is like wild stuff over here. Man, we are going on a journey of mind-blowing ideas. So after 3 unsuccessful reincarnations, the soul then is reincarnated into an animal or into a food. It says, by the way, that tzaddikim, that the righteous, are reincarnated into fish, which is why it's customary to eat fish on Shabbat, because we want to elevate the souls of a tzaddik. Now, it's very important to think about this. We're talking about a righteous person. How can a righteous person reincarnated? But it makes perfect sense based on what we're explaining, that the whole idea of reincarnation does not mean that the person didn't live a good life. It just means that there are areas that can be fulfilled better. That's what it means. So even a righteous person still may have not fulfilled or finished fulfilling the mission of that soul. So it has to be reincarnated. Sometimes it can even be as a fish. And this is why when we eat the fish on Friday night, in honor of the Holy Shabbat, we are elevating the soul. It says specifically that it actually is reincarnated into salmon. Go figure. You may have thought gefilte fish, right? But it's salmon. But anyway, so this idea then that a soul can reincarnate into animal is also part of the laws of why we have to treat animals nicely. It may be a soul of a loved one. also tells us why before we eat food, we have to make a blessing. Because perhaps all that soul needs, maybe when it was alive, it didn't make a blessing on the water. But now when I make a blessing, I'm fulfilling that one link that was missing of that soul. So I've completed the mission of the soul. All it needed was for me to make that one blessing. How simple is that? And in fact, this is what we read in text number 9. Behold, God does all these twice or thrice with man. The limitations of twice or thrice applies with man, meaning that a human soul is not subsequently reincarnated into a human body. Rather, it is forced to wander the planet until it is reincarnated in an inanimate, vegetative, or animal entity. Then, after it has done its penance, there is hope for its future, for God's endless mercies extend to all of his creations. So the model then of reincarnation serves a different purpose than regular reincarnation. In human form, as explained, reincarnation in human form is to give unrectified sparks another chance to rectify itself. Reincarnation to an animal, a plant, or inanimate form is a form of painful penance whose purpose is to cleanse the spark. Now, what is going on over here? What have we learned until now? So is there a way to discover our identities in previous reincarnations? Okay, so we're all reincarnated souls, and we all understand now, hopefully, at least we hear to some degree, our role in fulfilling the mitzvahs in order to complete the missions of our soul. But is there a way to know who my previous soul was? Do you want to know who your previous soul was? Perhaps more critical for the mission-minded, is there a way to discover the purpose, the unique task, and individual mission for which our soul was compelled to return to this world? If there's 613 mitzvahs, and my previous incarnation did 612, and I only need one, so please let me know what that one mitzvah is, so I fulfill this, I don't have to come back down again. Is there a way for me to know? So the teacher of the Arizal, the Ramak, or Moshe Cordova, says in text number 10. Sivan, you want to read for us, please?
Sure. It is impossible to deduce or intuit whether one possesses a reincarnated soul or not, unless one is the recipient of a mystical communication in this regard. You may wonder, how then will we know the purpose for which we enter this world, which mitzvah we must scrupulously perform, or which transgression we must especially avoid? The answers are naturally ingrained in us. We experience natural affinity and longing to perform a certain mitzvah, and that mitzvah is critical to our present incarnation. Or our inclination strives especially hard to entice us to commit a particular sin, for it is the very same sin in which we blundered during our previous life.
It is impossible, then, this great Kabbalist Ramak says, to know or feel our previous incarnations, history, unless we are privy to some inside information, which is unlikely. And what is he telling us? Why don't we know our previous incarnation? And the reason is because it's unimportant. First of all, as he mentioned, it's not who we are anyway. We're just an offshoot, a graft, or a flame from the original flame. That's not us, it's not our personality. Even though we know that in certain times, for example, Elijah the prophet is a reincarnated soul of Pinchas, the hero in the story, in the Torah portion of Pinchas, the Torah, the tribe of Aaron. We know certain great holy people who are reincarnated souls. We know in the story of Passover, Rabbi Lezer ben Azariah, when he was 17 years old, we know that he's a reincarnated soul of Samuel the prophet. We know that King David is a reincarnated soul of Adam. We know that because King David only lived 70 years and Adam lived 930 years, because Adam died prematurely. He should have lived till 1,000. And so the 70 years had to be completed. It was completed by King David. Which I want to share with you another mind-blowing idea. Are you ready for this? And this is a mind-blowing idea that I'm sharing to us in the class here, but don't share it to somebody that had, God forbid, experienced the loss. At least not when they're grieving. And this idea is like this. We don't have a lot of time left, and I feel bad that we have a lot more to discuss on this topic. But in very short, if you see, if you know of a young child that passed away, you should know that there's a very strong possibility that that child is simply completing the task of the soul that it comes from. There's a story that is told of a couple who were childless, and they repeatedly came to the Baal Shem Tov asking him to bless them for a child. Finally, after 20 years of marriage, the Baal Shem Tov blessed them with a child, and they were blessed with a baby boy. When the boy was 10 years old, he suddenly got sick and died. The parents were devastated. This is a child that was born later on in life. Their pride and joy, a brilliant child. He was a great kid, smart, obedient, just the best kid you could possibly ask for. It brought them pride and joy. And now the child passed away so young. They came running to Baal Shem. They said, you shouldn't have blessed us with the child. This is even worse. We wanted a child. You gave us a child. Now the child died so young. This is worse than not having a child, because now we experienced the joy. Devastated. But so let me explain to you what happened over here. That this child of yours actually is a reincarnated soul of a previous soul. There was once a man, a prince, who was born to a king, a brilliant child. The king hired the best tutors, and this kid was so smart, he kept on outwitting and outsmarting all his tutors. They didn't know what to do. The parents and they wanted to give this kid an education, but they couldn't find a teacher that can teach him. Finally, this guy comes to the door of the palace and he says, I'll teach your son, but on one condition. You let me spend an hour and a half every day privately in my room. No one can bother me. No problem. And this teacher taught this kid, and the kid loved this teacher. Every day the teacher would teach him things that the student never learned before. And this child was growing and growing and growing, and he could not get enough and learn enough from this teacher. And he wanted to know, what is this teacher doing an hour and a half every day? Finally, one day, this kid stuck into the teacher's room, and he saw that his teacher was wearing a talis and tefillin, and he was praying. So the student said, what's this? So the teacher said, I have to admit to you, I'm a Jewish, and what I've been teaching was the Torah. The Torah is endless. Therefore, you've never gotten enough. You always want more. Human knowledge has a limit, but the Torah is God's knowledge. It's limitless. Therefore, no matter how much I taught you, you learn. He said, teach me more. Tell me more. Eventually, this child went and he converted to Judaism. Because the first 10 years of his life, he lived in the palace of a non-Jew, ate the food of a non-Jewish parents. And therefore, Baal Shem Tov said that this soul had to come back down to complete its life cycle. And it was missing 10 years. In the first 10 years, it didn't live its life as a Jew, didn't learn Torah, didn't fulfill the mitzvos. So this soul came down into you, and you completed the journey of this soul. This brought comfort to the parents. The parents understood. So when we see, it doesn't explain, we are not the Baal Shem Tov, we're not on a holy level to explain why someone dies young or prematurely. We can never explain it. I would never even attempt to explain it to a grieving parent or a grieving spouse. We don't understand these things. But based upon what we're learning now, we have some kind of inkling of how this idea of reincarnation works and how the journey of the soul works. that the soul has a purpose, it has to fulfill a mission, and it has a journey, and it comes into us to reach one level. If we didn't complete it, it has to come back again a second time. If we still didn't complete it, it has to come back a third time. So everything that we do is in order to complete our soul. We are given a soul, we're given our power and our gifts and talents in order to complete our soul's mission. If we don't complete it, it's beholden only on us. We're the only ones that are guilty. We are given every tool. How do we know? The second question, which is our mitzvah? Whenever we find a mitzvah that's difficult to do, that's a sign that that's our mitzvah. Have you ever found that something that's important to you, it's very hard for you to do? You ever notice that? Think about any day. Every day you wake up, you have a task list. Which things don't you do? The most important thing on your list. The easy things, the busy things you tackle first. The most important things you leave for the last. Why? Because that's the most important thing. If you really want to feel accomplished, tackle the hardest thing in the day. Overcome your challenges. Do the hardest thing. Make that one phone call you don't want to make. Then the rest of the day will go amazing. You'll be light. You'll be joyous the whole day. So how do we know what's the most important thing? The thing that's hardest for us. How do you know which mitzvah is the most important for us? The one that's hardest for you. If it's eating kosher, you find impossible to eat kosher, you know that's the soul mitzvah that is important to you. If it's keeping Shabbat, that I can't do it, I need it, I can't, that's your mitzvah. If it's impossible for you to call your mother and say hello, that's your mitzvah. Maybe that's what it is. Whatever is the hardest one, that is your mitzvah. So let's circle back now to our questions. Page 192, we're going to skip a few pages here. A larger picture. So towards the start of this lesson, there was an exercise on exercise 5.1. And this exercise was designed to clarify current thoughts and feelings about reincarnation. At this point, having viewed the above materials, it is possible to examine the earlier responses and determine the accuracy. Right? Go back to exercise 5.1. Undoubtedly, a primary reincarnation phobia, the fear of discovering that we are truly someone else, simply reincarnated, will have melted before the Kabbalistic clarity that does not deny us our personal identity. We're still ourselves, doesn't matter. On the contrary, the Kabbalistic concept of reincarnation enhances our personal identity by providing us a unique purpose and meaning, an exclusive role to play within the universal human mission. This approach provides significant purpose and meaning, which is essential to emotional well-being. Lastly, as humanity's collective mission rapidly approaches its glorious conclusion, the spiritual spotlight shines with additional focus on a particular segment of the population. These are souls who are destined to play an especially important role in scoring humanity's final game-winning goal. Do you know who that unique particular segment of the population is? According to Jewish tradition, that is the Jewish women. The women play an unbelievable role in completing our mission in bringing the coming of Mashiach, just as the women have done in the times of the exodus of Egypt. We only left Egypt because of the act of the righteous women. We also only complete our collective mission because of the women. Now, it doesn't mean that all the guys on here can sit back and say, okay, my job is done. I'll leave it for the women. To the contrary, we still have our role that we have to complete. But who's the one that is actually, we have to pass the ball to the person who's going to kick the winning goal. And that is going to be the Jewish women. So let's go through some of these questions we had. Belief in reincarnation, is it a basic Judaism? Is it true or false? It's almost a trick question. This may have been a trick question. The statement is false simply because the word basic, defined by Webster's online dictionary as of relating to or forming the base or essence. But really, is it a reincarnation, a Jewish belief? The answer is absolutely. In the Jewish view, reincarnation means that a soul is that inhabited one body returns to inhabit another body. Not quite. A part of the soul, perhaps, or offshoot of the soul inhabits the body, but not necessarily the essence of the soul. Number 3, a human soul can be reincarnated in a non-human entity, such as an animal or plant. Yes, that is correct. 4, a reincarnated soul does not have its own identity, but shares its identity with someone who lived in a previous lifetime. That's correct. That's incorrect, sorry. The newly spun off spark has its own unique identity and personality. It is related, so to speak, to the previous incarnation only by virtue of a shared divine spark that it animates it, but it has no other connection to it other than that. It's a completely new soul, new identity, new personality, new everything. 5, the purpose of doing good in one's current life is to be reincarnated as a person of higher stature in a future incarnation. Not at all, of course not. The purpose of doing good today is to enhance our soul right now, for me to fulfill my mission of why I'm here in this earth. 6, a soul is reincarnated as a penalty of sins committed in a prior life. Not exactly penalty, more a rehabilitation to complete its mission. And finally, most souls today are reincarnations. Yes, that is correct. And so what is the benefit of our mission? Okay. So the benefit of reincarnation is it enhances personal identity by providing a unique purpose. Number 2, the purpose of reincarnation is it augments mission with previous good deeds. So my good deed, I'm simply building upon the shoulders of giants. If somebody thinks it's too much for me to do, don't worry. Do your best, and you are going to be standing on the shoulders of giants. Also, the reincarnation is a pathway to realizing God's master plan. And it provides a role within the general human mission. And so when we realize that we have a personal mission, it motivates us to continue living. And this, by the way, is what the psychotherapist, Dr. Viktor Frankl, in Man's Search for Meaning, says, he says, as long as a human being has a purpose and has a mission and a goal that they're trying to accomplish, this will help them want to continue to live. The moment we say I have no purpose to live, there's no mission anymore, then we lose our drive. And so the Kabbalists understanding this, understanding the ideas of reincarnation, understanding the ideas of the journey of the soul, recognizes the human importance of it, the godly importance of it, the spiritual purpose of it, the soul's purpose of it. And we combine it all together, we have one ultimate outcome, and that is that we merit to bring the ultimate redemption by completing the mission of the soul with the coming of Mashiach, which will be right now. So the souls of our generation, the last generation before Mashiach, are reincarnations of the generation that left Egypt. The exodus from Egypt came due to the efforts of the righteous women of that time, and in our generation too, the women lead the way to our redemption. This is why we look around and we see the amazing, powerful women in our lifetime, and we say, wow, we can learn from them because they're simply guiding us to the ultimate redemption. May it be right now. Amen. I'm sure you have more questions on today's lesson. Thank you for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week for the final lesson. Thank you very much.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
I have something to show you.
Please.
Can you see the title?
No.
It's The Wise Men of Helm.
I've
had, when you said that, it made me laugh. I've had this book since I was a little girl.
Exactly. I can tell you a bunch of those stories in that book, probably. A lot of funny stories, yes.
Super funny story. And this is really old. It was $3.50, this book. I think I got it a million years ago.
Yes, Chelm is the scapegoat for Jewish jokes, Jewish silly jokes.
I just wanted to show you my book.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for class.
All right. Have a good night, everyone. It's good to see you all. All the best. Take care. Bye.
Take care, bye.
I have a question.
Yeah.